in the beginning of my healing journey or spiritual awakening or whatever you want to call it, right? Everybody goes through this in their own way, where there's just a period in their life where they're just sitting or just being with themselves, right? It just looks like nothing else, no other period in their life. For me, that period just looked like sitting and meditating on balcony. Day after day, I had no idea what I was doing. And then that day after day just ended up being 3.5 years. So here we are now. Thank you. So at the beginning, I would say like the first 3 years was a lot of healing, as in like healing in the sense of like just really being seen, right? And a lot of that being seen was like ways in which I was like admonishing myself or punishing myself, because the programming here was set to look at myself, perceive myself through the eyes of other people. And so the ways in which they disapproved of me or scolded me or criticized me or rejected me, that's what played here 24/7, right? And maybe most of my life, right? Or I could say now, actually in hindsight, the reason that I was thinking about this is that something else has been playing here. And maybe equally, I don't know, because I think when you're on any journey of growth, right, when you're evolving and changing, right, there's tremendous fear in that too. So there's not only tremendous fear in just like the aspects of yourself that you thought, right, or perceived your, as negative about yourself, right? But then there's tremendous fear. There's equal fear, if not, right, about the aspects of yourself that are beautiful and brilliant and are of like your greatest potential, of your potential, right? Of your like excellence, of your like just anything wonderful and fantastical and really like reaching the peak or the apex of humanity. Like it's fear about that. And I think once I really went, like the bulk of my work really, if I could say there was, or maybe I could say like the first 3 years was really about like, the aspects of myself maybe that I thought or perceived, as negative. And mostly again through the eyes of other people. But something so fascinating happened is like the more and more I worked through that stuff, and like the emptier and emptier I became, right? As in the more presence I found like I was, experiencing, like I was just experiencing being here, and the clarity and the spaciousness and the presence. So beautiful. Something else started happening, as in I started like experiencing like the thoughts and the tremendous fear of the brilliance that I am, right? The beauty that I am, right? Of my character, my appearance, right? Things that I like never even like really recognized or felt before, but now I'm like feeling, because and I can see now in hindsight, right, that for 10 years before my spiritual awakening, when I was posting on social media, right, every time I would hit that post button, since I would share my writing, right, like long passages of like vulnerable writing, right, that were very personal to me, as soon as I would hit that post button, this thought loop would enter my brain and it would play here like just non-stop. And that thought loop was the words that I had written. They would but they would actually play over and over in my mind. And so I would experience the experience that I would have when they would play, is that I would be caught in that experience. It was almost like an energetic, like feeling of like the tonality of the words or the energy of the words, right? So I was lost in that. And for so long in my life, I dissociated, right? I wasn't present. And so now, after healing and awakening so much, I realized that dissociation was just from absolute fear. Tremendous, utter, absolute. It was all fear. And not only was it like the aspects of myself that I perceived as negative, but also the aspects of myself that I was afraid of, right? My fear, my brilliance and my beauty, and just the really wonderful and just most magical things about me, like most beautiful things about me. And it was only like in the last like 6 months, literally just this year, right? I think after I had passed like the 3-year mark, that I started like coming into like the recognition of my brilliance. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this whole fear manifesting as thought and identity has really covered up and clouded, right, the brilliance that is actually here. And my people pleaser identity, you know, that have been playing the thoughts and stories and beliefs, like this was just like it was so covering up like the ideas of other people, right, and the fears of what they would think, right, was completely covering up the recognition of my own brilliance. And not only was it covering up like my ability to flow as freely, right, to speak as articulately, but it was just covering up the actual recognition. Like, and I think now when I think about, you know, my partner that I had lived for 10 years, and maybe this is the case for you too, where maybe this is the case for everybody brilliant, right? Or maybe for everybody, because everybody is brilliant actually in their own way. But the people that are closest to us, maybe it could be like one person, 1 or 2 people that really see you. They see your brilliance. And I think like, oh my gosh, like when I recognize like, you know, my brilliance now, like more and more, I think about, oh my gosh, my partner must have seen this in me like my whole life, right? We knew each other for many years, even before we started living together. And then I also thought about the way that I see like my partner's my partner's brilliance. Like this is probably like the same thing, right? The way that he sees me, and it's so crazy. But our eyes are almost like covered up. They're almost clouded, right? By society, by conditioning, by delusion, by belief, right? By the thoughts and ideas and stories that are really just a projection of fear. And everybody has their own journey to becoming clear. Every single human being is going to become clear somehow in their mind during their life. And whatever that process looks like for you, right? Whether it's sitting, whether it's, you know, something else in your life, right? These ideas, thoughts, and stories, they will become cleared out. They will come cleared out in your mind. Because this is the play of life, like this delusion. This is what we are supposed to experience, right? We encounter this, right? And we believe in it, right? We're caught in the world of delusion. We don't even know it, right? Because if we knew it, we wouldn't be in a delusion, you know. We have no idea, at least, right, in the beginning. And then there's a point where we know we're caught in a delusion, and that's utter hell, right? Because hell, before that, it was just, you didn't even have the awareness that you were in a delusion. So, right? But once you know, oh my gosh, then the hellfires start burning. And they burn for years, right? They burn for years in the most sacred time in your life. And during this period, because everything that you know literally is disappearing, dissolving, fading, like just like abruptly, like, you know, stopping right before your eyes. You're like, what the heck? Like, I was just midway in that thought, and now it's completely gone, right? And this keeps happening, and the thoughts and the statements just keep getting shorter and shorter over time, right? At first, it could be like a 5-word statement, right? 5-word sentence. The next time you see the thought, it's like stops at 4 words and just completely like stops, right? Disappears. Then it's 3 words, then it's 2 words, and then you keep seeing this. And so like inch by inch, literally millimeter by millimeter, sometimes inch by inch, right? Whatever. Your old world, your old identity that was made up of all the beliefs and stories and things that you used to believe just out of your own unique conditioning starts to disappear. And then you're just left in clarity and presence. And you see like fear so much more clear now because you've become so intimate with it. You know it so well, like you know your own flavor of fear. It was like you know that it's so funny because it is that. There was a show many years ago on like VH1 called The Flavor of Love, and this really is that, right? The flavor of fear is the flavor of love, because when you see fear clearly, you realize, oh my gosh, like fear really is love. Like it is love. The fact that it exists is love. And you experience actually in your body that it is love. And that everything is love. Right? And this is really just the play of mankind, that first we experience the fear, then we begin to heal, and then we begin to serve. And it kind of makes sense when you think about it, right? That I would have to go through some kind of, play. I would have to go through some kind of journey, right? To then learn from it, learn truly who I am, learn the truth of me, which is not any story or idea that I believed. The truth is not a story, it's not an idea, and it's not a belief. The truth is the truth. It just is, and I just am. And so it makes sense, that I would, and we all have to go on some kind of journey. And that's why we all have a story. And then we serve from that story. And ironically, we serve when the story heals. And when it heals as in it disappears. Right? So we're no longer, that story is no longer psychologically driving us. Right? You don't experience like the mental movie that's playing here 24/7. You don't experience the delusion to that degree, at least. There's so much space, there's so much clarity, and there's no, right, you at the very least you don't believe in the story when it's playing in your mind, because you know that it's not you, as in you know that you're not your psychological identity, the one that was born out of suffering, because you've healed it so much. And I can say you've healed it, right? Even if there's a tendril of it left, even if it tries to play again, you've healed it. And so first you suffer, right? Or first you feel fear, right? And the fear is really like you have to go through the play of suffering, right? Then you feel your suffering. So you heal, right? Healing really is feeling the pain. And then you transcend. You transcend your story. You transcend who you are, who you were, right? You transcend your story and you serve. And you know what's so interesting is that since everybody's conditioning is so unique, right? Of course, their journey will look completely different. Completely different. Absolutely different. It has to, right? If you're somebody who grew up in extreme poverty and that was your journey, right? Then, of course, that's going to look very different than somebody like me that grew up with an extreme people-pleasing identity, right? So my journey looked like stopping everything in my life, living in my partner's house rent-free for 3 years, right? With the fear of like, oh my gosh, what will people, what's his family, what is my family, what is his family going to think about me? Then after the 3 years, coming back home, and then further doing nothing at home. And my mom is like the hardest working, busiest, like bee there is. I'm worrying about what she's going to think about me, worrying about what my brother's going to think about me, worrying about what my extended family is going to think about me. right? Because nobody has any idea what I'm experiencing. My partner, nobody has any idea, like, and nobody that I know has gone through spiritual awakening. Nobody. So I found myself just on this journey, just completely alone. And I think in some sense, everybody has to walk this journey alone, right? To some degree, they have to. Like, even if there is help or a guide or, a guru or a teacher or a mentor, ultimately and always still, right? Even if you do have help, you've got to do the work yourself, and you're alone in it. You're alone when you're doing that work. You're alone with yourself. And I think I needed to be alone because there was so much reliance and dependence on other people emotionally, and I was so distorted, and like my mind was so distorted from from the truth of me. It was so distorted. Like that distortion, gosh, like my heart breaks over and over again when I think about that distortion. Like literally there's no sense of me, and on top of that, like if there was any sense of me, it was comprised of like the horrible things that people believed about me, just constantly like just admonishing myself and punishing myself and criticizing myself. That is like the hell that I had to walk through, like healing that, like that brutality. Because my mind, the programming here, took those things to be the truth, because it had to abandon its own truth as a child in order to survive. So because it took those things to be true, my nervous system took those things to be true. So my body was completely like, regulated in that way of doing and being what other people needed me to be in order to survive, in order to be healthy, in order for my heart rate and digestion and sleep to be normal, right? So coming out of that was literally like a 3 year, like I'm almost on 4 years now. And I think I've done like the most nervous system work in the last 6 months. It was brutal. And it's such a beautiful thing, like, and such a merciful thing that it takes time, because this is not something the body that can do overnight. It cannot handle this overnight. It absolutely cannot. It will die, right? It can't. So it has to do it literally inch by inch, millimeter by millimeter. Like the body has to feel safe, literally millimeter by millimeter. And during this time, like you find yourself like, going through this process, and something in you like wants to expedite it, right? It's normal for everybody. Like everybody just wants the journey to be over. But you've got to walk through it literally millimeter by millimeter. You have to. And you've got to like hang in there, and you've got to bear it. Because it's literally that patience, right? Like that process, that millimeter by millimeter process, that shapes you, that will shape you into the person that you need to be. And you experience this, like literally, like even millimeter by millimeter, there's so much change, where just the next day you experience like profound change in your inner experience, profound change in your behavior, profound change in like your clarity, right? This process is happening on its own. And therefore all you need to do is really just trust, right? Because whatever brought you to this process is guiding you through it and will ensure that it comes to completion. It will ensure that. You don't have to worry. You don't have to worry. This is the brilliant mind. The mind that, out of its own necessity for survival, became the lie. It became the lie so flawlessly, so seamlessly. like so perfectly, literally. It became that utterly until one day you woke up and there was just clarity. There was just presence. And then began the journey of realizing and experiencing, I am not my mind. I was living in delusion before, and I am not the delusion. But that initial recognition isn't enough, right? You've got to do the work. You've got to sit and clear this out every moment of every day. And that process might take years, it might take months. But what's required of you, like, we don't know how long it takes. It takes however long it takes. For me, it's taken almost 4 years. But it's really that is the journey. That is the journey. And that journey will change your life like nothing else in your life has before. Nothing else, you name it. No event, nothing. No loss, nothing. Because this is from like the mystical realm. Like, this is from like the unknown realm, right? This is occurring like on an energetic level. And there probably, is a scientific explanation for it. There can be. But the way that you experience it is just so, it's like, oh my gosh, there's got to be something else. There's got to be like a spiritual element of this, because when you really experience the mind and the way that it operates, right, the way that it shapeshifts so quickly, you realize, oh my gosh, there's something else that is driving this. There's something else, right? This level of genius of the mind, like the personal mind, right, the ego mind, the fear-based mind, the way in which it's operating is like there's got to be something else driving this, besides science. So, and maybe that's why they refer to it as spiritual awakening. I don't even know what spirit is, or my only understanding of energy is my experience of it. Is the experience of my experience with energy in the last 3.5 years in my body, right? How I've experienced it in my body. But I don't know, I'm curious, if any of you have come across or heard of scientific explanations of this, please comment and share. And of course, if any of you have experienced spiritual awakening or this kind of process or journey in your own life, where there was a period of your life where that looked like nothing else, and it helped you work through great tremendous fear, like your life's fear, right? Not just fear about one instance or one event that happened in your life, but like you were working through all of your life's fear, right? If that's something that you've experienced, please share, please leave a comment. I love you. It's been really great to be with you, and I'll see you soon.